Hey everybody, Boots in the Roots here with another quick practical tip for your small farm or garden without all the chit chat and giggling. Today, a fun project building what I call bricklayer style garden bed, flower bed, herb bed out of scrap 2x4 that you can find laying around your own property or maybe around your neighborhood at a construction site or at your neighbor's house that they aren't using. Let's take a look how to do it. Many of you will have a pile similar to this around your property. A bunch of scrap 2x4 from building various things. Or maybe you see a neighbor or a construction site that has a bunch of this stuff laying around. So if you don't have any yourself, go ask permission to dig through their scrap bin. They'll probably be happy to get rid of it. And you can build a really cool little garden bed out of this stuff. So let's take a look at the steps here. So I've jumped ahead here and mitered 4 equal length pieces. I'm going to make this one pretty compact just to show you the process. You can make it larger, you could make it smaller. I think if it got too small, it wouldn't look real proportional given the 2x4's thickness, but that's up to you to try it out. So each of these is 36 inches from the longest side. And this is the one portion of this project where you really should have pretty accurate mitered corners, just so it's stronger and goes together easier when you try to screw these together. So the next step will be pre-drilling these corners so we don't split the ends out. Let's take a look at that. I've done a quick preliminary layout of my 3x3 pieces here. You want to do this on as level ground as possible. Ideally on a concrete or asphalt slab would be good. And we are going to come in and pre-drill this direction so that when you run your screws in here, you're not going to split the wood. So I will do that and then come back and show you the result of that. So I'm just drilling through like this. You can stand it up on end here so you can push down and get through. You don't need to do it with it laying flat on the ground. And you're going to use a drill bit that's just a hair smaller than the threads of the screw that you're using. And I'm using like a 3-inch Deckmate star drive deck screws on these. It just has to be long enough to get into the other piece over there. So go ahead and drill all those corners and we'll move on to screwing them together. You can see here the Deckmate screws are in. And it's important to get this as flat as possible now so that when you start layering your scrap pieces on there, they don't start getting all crooked and tilted. So the more you're off here, the more pieces you add for your height, the more amplified the error is going to be. So this is the one step here that is fairly critical, but it's not that difficult to get it flat. And you can make some adjustments to your pieces as they go up later by putting some shims underneath if you had to. So let's take a look at the next step, which is the fun part, getting your scrap pieces on here. Here we are laying out the first level with the scrap pieces, and I want to show you a couple scenarios here to watch out for. So you want to pick which sides are going to have the end grain showing here. You want it to be the same over here, so you got end grain, and then you want to have that end grain over here also. So these are all just loose now. I just laid it out, and this is a okay and good situation here because you got your pieces fitting and you got a little overage here. So you'll just mark this and cut it. And if you want to nail it in now and then just use a hand saw or a skill saw and just cut it while it's on here, that's the easiest. If you want to cut it off of the frame and measure and put it on that way, you can do that also. Over here is a not good situation. This piece here was not long enough and you wind up with this short little piece here. You definitely don't want that. So you're gonna have to get this one out of here, save it for another area, or cut it and save this piece for another area, and then find another longer piece to fit into here. So I'm going to get a layer done here. Then you're going to fill in these sides here, fill this in, and then you'll be able to start the next layer, and where you're going to turn the boards so the end grain is coming out the other ends. So let's get it further along here to the next step and then take a look. Continuing on here, I have this layer nailed in and trimmed off over there. And working over here, I'm using 8-penny 2.5. These are ring shank. And I'm using the ring shank so that they don't loosen up and pull out over time. And I've got this fresh lumber here. I was able to drive those in without any splitting. This one off of an old board, which I've also have a piece of it over there, was starting to split, so you may need to pre-drill. So just have a drill handy and your hand saw or skill saw to trim the ends. So I pre-drilled this one and gonna nail this one in and get this row done. And then we'll continue on the sides here. Let's take a look. Here I'm using a hand saw to trim this end off. And you can kind of just use the frame below as a guide. And just go along and get that cut off. Okay, we have our sides filled in and they're sandwiched between the two there that stick out over the edge a little. And this is the one point of the project where you do have to measure the one board and cut it to fit in between. Okay, so that's done on both sides. Now you're going to switch the direction of the end grain. So here's the end grain here. You're going to stick your scrap piece up there, and your end grain's going to be here and over here, and end grain's going to be there. Then you'll be filling in between here, and then you reverse and go back the other way. So just keep working your way up, stacking your way up. And you can cut or adjust the pieces however you want it to look. I wouldn't get too short on pieces. It's going to be hard to nail. You're going to have a lot of nails in there. So at some point you're going to throw away some of the lumber, but this way you can use up as much of the scrap as possible. Don't do too many nails in each one. I've got 3 in ones that are about 1 foot long. If you get too many nails, there is a chance when you're nailing, when you go through, that you're going to hit a nail underneath. So be aware of that. Wear your safety glasses. And just continue stacking your way up. And you're not going to be able to go super high with these. The variances in the lumber, the twists and curves, it's going to start to get a little wonky if you got too high. But you're going to be able to go at least 1 foot, maybe 18 inches. Just experiment with it. Some you make may be able to go higher, and others you make may not be able to go as high depending on your lumber quality. So I'm just going to continue here and then take a look at when we're a little further along. We are working our way up here, and I'm filling in the ends here again. I wanted to point out one more thing, that you don't want to have the seams line up on the same. So it's why I call it the bricklayer style garden bed, is you stagger those joints. So this would be okay here, this would not be okay. So you don't want to do that. That's where you're going to have some flex and a weak point there in the structure, and it won't look as nice. You want to have that joint staggered like that. So we will continue on. Here's one that's split on me. I did not pre-drill it. I thought it would be okay. It's gonna hold, but over here, this could pop out and chip away. So just put 2 nails, one on either side of the crack there, pre-drill it, and then just nail it down like that. That'll hold this piece separate from this piece here. There's no point trying to rip that out. So here I have another dilemma. I've got this really long piece, and it's tempting to just lay that on there. The end grain has switched again and going back the other way, and you think, oh, that's just perfect, but down here it didn't extend out. But let's say this piece did extend out. It's tempting to just put that on there, but it just isn't going to look like a bricklayer style bed. Then you're going to have this kind of pattern going on down below, and then this long one up here. So what you're going to want to do is decide where you want to cut these. So you could cut it short here and nail this part down, or you could cut it to here, seam it right there, nail this part down, and then just find another piece to go on to the end there. That just keeps the pattern going. Well, here we are. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 layers, and I'm going to stop here because, well, I am out of nails, out of scrap lumber, and just about out of daylight. But this would be a nice bed for some flowers or herbs. Ideally, I would go up maybe 2 or 3 more rows, and I may do that on this one as I get some more scraps. But you can see it gives you a nice pattern, and you can leave the wood to age naturally, or you could paint it with milk paint or some kind of stain. Also, you will get some dirt and water seepage through, which will stain the outside. So you could line this with visqueen plastic, just lay it up in here and staple it down a bit below the top here. Just fold it over, staple it again. And if you have gophers, you may want to flip this over and put hardware cloth along the bottom. And this here is all the scrap that was left over. So out of all these scrap pieces I had here, that's all that was left. So that came out pretty good. Let's take one last look at the tools you're going to need. So you can have circular saw or hand saw, either's fine. Drill bits, drill. Speed square is nice for making sure your cuts are square. Sharpie marker, hammer, and your 8-penny 2.5 ring shank or similar. Doesn't have to be ring shank, but I do like their holding power. So one last thing to do, which is let's take a look at how it would be filled with soil. Okay, here we are. The finished product, filled and watered. Getting plants in, ready to continue planting. That looks pretty good. And again, you can stain it, paint it, use a clear coat to give it this wet look all the time. Whatever you'd like to do. Go a little bit higher if you want. Just have fun with it and make it your own size. This is 3x3. I wouldn't get too huge with this. It is quite heavy and it'll get a little bit difficult to move around. Plus you'll be prone to more twisting and warpage over time as you water this. Again, you may want to line this with plastic so water and mud don't start seeping out of the cracks there. But if you don't care, that's fine. So I hope you enjoyed this fun garden construction project, and we will see you next time.